And then the last point that I want to make is about poverty. Today in the National Post, you see, I read the papers as if I'm reading philosophy. I read it as a chaos theory. It certainly is in a way. It said that there was an article about Vancouver, and it said that Vancouver, that they believe there are approximately 10,000 people in Vancouver, in British Columbia, who are homeless, and that Vancouver shelters turned away 40,000 people in 8 months, which I assume are the winter months, or the rainy months, last year, and that included 16,000 women and children. Now, the point about this, it's just an article, and tomorrow will be an article about something else, I guess. The point about that is homelessness is a profound civilizational failure by Canada, and it is an enormous intellectual failure by people like us. The point is that, food banks, homeless shelters, these are attempts by good people to, in a sense, fit in with the way this society works, which is a corporatist manner in which we manage problems, we don't solve them. Right? So you manage problems. But a civilization like ours has no right to manage homelessness and the lack of food. That is a failure. Management is a failure. And the other thing is these problems are incredibly easy to solve. These aren't a big deal problems. We could have solved homelessness 25 years ago in this country. It is not even expensive to solve the problem. But you have to have the intellectual willpower to want to solve it. You have to desire to solve the problem. Instead of that, we're desiring to manage the problem. I was told by somebody 2 days ago, 3 days ago in Toronto, that in 1999, the homelessness prevention budget in Ontario was 35,000, and now it's 35 million. And every meeting she goes, she says, well, actually, why don't we not study how to prevent it? Why don't we just build housing? In 35 million, we can build quite a bit of housing. Oh no, we must study the underlying, So this is part of that. It's absolutely, it's absolutely central to where I began, to that silo, inward-looking, no integrated lateral thought. And the result is, decades later, we're still studying, and we still have people, not enough shelters. We don't need more shelters. We need more houses. It isn't actually a big intellectual problem. But in that case, where are the intellectuals? On the streets, in public, in large numbers, on this kind of issue. The intellectuals could have made it impossible for provincial governments and the federal government to allow this to go on so long. There are not people lying on the streets of London. There are not people lying on the streets of Paris. There aren't people lying on the streets of Berlin. But all across people, there are people lying on the streets. It's a Canadian failure. It's not a Western failure. In other Western countries, they decided to solve the problem. Sometimes it was ugly. I'm not saying it was all done the right way. But we have failed. And it is, therefore, a failure of the intellectual class. You think your way out of problems like that. You come up with solutions. You make them disappear, and you get on to something else. So, the question is, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of independent scholars and university scholars. I've raised a few issues. I think all of these issues are relevant to the kind of life and kind of work that we have. And I've ended with two, which I think show where there's enormous opportunity. One, the original enormous opportunity. The second one, an embarrassment beyond belief and a human tragedy. And we have to think about, intellectually, how does one go about solving it? And this is where I want to finish. In my study in Toronto, I just had painted with the help of Haida Language Center in Masson, rather in Skidegate. I just had painted, my studies in a circular room, sort of 19th century circular room with 5 windows and a door. And up around I had painted a Haida proverb, which is, the world is as sharp as a knife. If you don't watch out, you'll fall right off. And it's painted in Haida, and then they very kindly sent me a recording of it, and so on. They did a special recording for me. And the world is as sharp as a knife. If you don't watch out, you'll fall right out. What does watch out mean? Well, watch out means two things. It means you must think, you must be reflective, the intellectual's job. But watching out is also existential. it's also action. It's thinking and acting. The job of the scholar, the job of an intellectual, is to watch out for society, to think, to be heard to think, to be seen to think, and therefore to act in public. To be on that line, that sharp line. We do risk falling off. The intellectual, that willingness to be on the line, on the sharp line, is the intellectual obligation to be ethical. The line of ethics, of public action, is as sharp as a knife. And the intellectual is expected to find their balance through their intellectual engagement. Thank you very much.
You want to change our world? On Elections Day, we must realize that we give away our legal rights to make decisions and prioritize our social issues and human rights. Beyond voting deceptions of traditional elections, we must demand to retain command. Stop voting for leaders who decide on your behalf. Elect facilitators to be the implementers of our choice from our polls. Participation in our polls is the essence of direct democracy. Social consciousness in our polls needs your vote to change our world.